Jose, thank you. And you do owe me a beer, is that right? Was that the agreement? Okay. Okay, so let's move forward. Our next presenter is Josefina Maestru. Did I get that correct? Okay, very good. I jumped forward. Coordinator Director, UN Water Decade Program on Advocacy and Communication. And she'll be speaking to what we have learned from implementation of the Millennium Development Goals. So please, let's welcome Josefina.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you to the CEO Water Mandate and to our Indian hosts for being here and for inviting me to make this presentation. I have a very difficult task to talk about the lessons on the Millennium Development Goals, and I would like to focus especially on what we have learned for water and sanitation, which is why we are here. The idea is that when we are talking about the post-2015 agenda, first of all is that we shouldn't forget that we have still some years to go until 2015, and secondly that we had a very good agenda that helped us a lot, and we should build on that. We should not just think we have to reinvent the wheel, that we have been here and we have done a lot of work. So, first of all, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the Millennium Development Goals. I was asked by Jason here, who is directing the whole process, that some people may not even know, what is the Millennium Development Goals, so that, we need to think a little bit about what is this. So basically, in September 2000, a long time ago, 189 world leaders signed the Millennium Declaration. So the basic point about the Millennium Declaration is that basically we decided on 8 goals. We decided on goals related to hunger, to education, to empowering women, to child mortality, to maternal health, to HIV, AIDS, malaria and other diseases, to ensure the environmental sustainability and to create a global partnership for water. So we decided on quite a broad agenda. For water, we basically had goal 8, target 7, that really meant to reduce by half the number of people without access to safe water and basic sanitation. It wasn't a very ambitious goal, but it was a very clear, very target-oriented goal. So the good news is that it has been achieved for basic water services, although there is some polemic about how we measure this and whether we are really there, whether it's a moving target, because population is growing and cities are growing, mega cities are growing. But the very clear message is that there is 2.5 billion people that have not access to basic sanitation services. And we had a very clear message from the Deputy Secretary General that we need to focus on sanitation and we need to focus up to 2015 on this. And I just put some figures here that I heard at the beginning of the morning that it is still relevant for India, obviously. You heard this morning, and I think that that's very clear. But what I also like to say is that the Millennium Development Goals really meant a new change of paradigm in relation to growth, to economic development. So what it looked at is that growth or human development is multidimensional. So it's not only about GDP, which had concentrated all the efforts of development and development agencies until then, but it is about it really responds to the human development paradigm of development. So it's based on well-being and linked to a human rights-based approach. I think that's very important, so that it has all those facets, and we should not only concentrate on economic growth. Another very important point of the Millennium Development Goals is that we have interlinkages, we have synergies between the different Millennium Development Goals. That if we work on water and sanitation, we are helping education, we are helping health, we are creating possibilities of economic growth, of agricultural innovation. So the idea is that all these development goals are interrelated. And very important, they are based on some core values that hopefully will transcend and will continue after the 2015 agenda. I think all these things are important because they are under all the Millennium Development Goals agenda. So solidarity, equality, dignity, and respect for nature. if that continues to be the core values we want to focus after 2015, is also for you to say here, so whether we want to continue with this or not. In relation to what lessons from the MDGs, I think in relation to water and sanitation, it's very clear that we have many success stories. A very important point is that to progress on reducing by half the number of people without access to basic water and sanitation services, really we needed collaboration among countries. That has been very important. Not only north-south, but south-south. People have really been helping each other to bring some good practices, to scaling up good practices, and to making sure that this is happening. Something very important in relation to achieving the goals have been the community-based projects. I think that has led to partnerships and also targeted finance. We see how international finance organizations more and more have moved from big projects to small community projects, helping to create financial capacity at local level and helping with different types of innovative financing mechanisms to really target the very poor. So that's something that is different from what it was there before. And we also learned that there is a gender, poverty, water, energy nexus, a huge nexus there. And so basically, if we aim to the women who are really many times in these communities, those that provide water services, then we will also help address poverty and will help addressing water issues. At the same time, if women have water services, they will have water and sanitation services also, they will have better education and better health and will contribute to the economy. And they will, through improving their ability to their education and their training. So something that we have also learned is that access to drinking water and basic sanitation needs to be further improved. So I think much of the criticisms so far is that we have really cut by half the people without access to water, but that was because we have aimed to those that were easier. And now what is left is that the very poor and women, who basically is much more difficult to get that, and it's much more expensive to some extent to reach them. That's something also obviously open to discussion. You may have something to say this. We also saw that we need to also look at strengthening risk reduction capacities. I won't elaborate on this because I think we saw enough this morning on this, and we also need to improve monitoring of how we are achieving these goals. We had a formal review on the contributions of the MDG agenda to foster development, precisely at the point that we started to talk about the post-2015, and I'd like to share with you what are the lessons in this review. In relation to framework and concept, what we saw is that the MDGs have provided an unprecedented public and private support for the water and sanitation agenda, and I'm not sure whether you agree with that, but that wasn't the case before. So water has become a greater priority for governments than it was before. The MDGs have provided time-bound, concrete targets which have galvanized political leaders to take concrete actions. And it has encouraged political leaders to give poverty reduction in specific regions. That has been particularly the case in Africa and in least developed countries. So, in principle, it has been a good framework. In terms of format, some of the advantages that we want to see in the post-2015 agenda, and that's why we are talking about this here, okay, is that they are easy to understand and has facilitated policy monitoring and accountability. So we had some reports at global level, like the Joint Monitoring Program report, that really has helped us to see whether people, the different countries have really progressed towards achieving these goals. And very importantly, it has supported the development of statistical capabilities and coordination of efforts between different statistical offices within the countries and at international level. So that in itself is quite an achievement. In terms of implementation, I think the monitoring at global level has provided incentives to countries. This has been debated because some countries, have told us that the Joint Monitoring Program, it doesn't exactly respond to what they have been really doing, that they have been really achieving much more, that they have been progressing much more, okay? And but it has provided an incentive to many countries to make sure that they really are working on this. And also, I think it has led to increases in aid towards the basic water and sanitation services and led to improved coordinated action. But that doesn't mean that in the UN we are always telling ourselves how well we have done things. We have also looked at the weaknesses of the MDGs and how we have implemented it. So in terms of framework and context, I think Jose Gesti has already told us that some of the problems was that it was pretty much a top-down approach. It was good, it was clear, but it was a top-down approach. We needed to be more consultative, and that's why we are here also. So, and that's why we are going through all these post-2015 consultations that Jose Gesti has told us about. They also tell us that it has excluded some issues from the Millennium Declaration, and we need to bring them back into the agenda. There is no specific targets for sustainable water management. You can see that when we are talking about the Millennium Development Goals, we're mainly focusing really on targets related to basic services for water and sanitation. We are not really having any targets for water resources management. When this morning you have been talking a lot about water security, about the need to have that reliability in water resources. That wasn't there, so we need to get some targets. You are going to discuss this later, and I hope that some of these will come back to the agenda through you. And also they tell us that there was no context specific. Some countries were very badly off. Some countries have many problems in their mega cities. It's very difficult for them to advance. Some countries maybe have it easier. A lot of what the countries have done better are those that also have improved in terms of the GDP, their overall economic growth. Those ones that are really worse off is finding it a lot of difficulty. So it's not context specific. We need to really focus on what the specific problems are of the different countries. In terms of the format, they told us that we need to be able to account more for population dynamics. Okay, so it's this moving target issue. It's been a lot of conversation about the difficulty of accounting for what is safe water and access. We may have now more people who are at 500 meters from a safe water supply source, but how are we measuring whether that's safe or not? What are we talking about that? So we are trying to improve that for the next generation. And there was difficulty of monitoring progress among vulnerable groups, qualitative aspects, and interdependencies across MDGs. So are we really doing well about, for example, monitoring, having gender disaggregated data? No. Are we doing better about really looking at different income groups and how they are doing, whether they are doing better or not? No, we are not doing enough on that. So we really need to progress in that sense. And in terms of implementation, the weaknesses have been, what I was talking about, the local context, the difficulty of accounting for local context when we have rigid international goals that may not consider local circumstances, and both on-track and off-track monitoring failed to account for some considerable progress in Africa, for example. So it isn't all the same. So overall, top-down, focus on WAS and not so much on water resources management. So the GMP report highlights some shortcomings of the current MDG target, that it requires having by half those without access, leaving many unserved, and it incorporates concepts that are difficult to measure. Okay, and some people say that it's a donors-led agenda, that it doesn't really include the responsibilities of developed countries. So it only includes responsibilities of developing countries, so we need to move to an agenda that is for all, and all of us have responsibilities, not only as an international donors, but also us as the way we manage water in all the countries. So it has to be context specific, and there is some specific aspects that we're missing, like climate change, good governance, the nexus issues, how water users are progressing, the role of private sectors, and neglect for the poorest and the more vulnerable, and the lack of disaggregated data. So I think that's something like that. There is a way forward for WASH, and I think we're going to talk about that in later on. So the post-2015 agenda is really talking about things like universal coverage, about how to deal with inequalities, how to link with the integrated water resources management, and also in relation to water resources management, you saw before in the presentation of Jose Gesti about what the kind of issues we are talking about. I'm just going to put one more slide and I'm finished. Okay, I'm not going to put this once, which is about context. I just want to give you some examples from a recent consultation we had in Geneva in relation to the kind of issues that you may want to talk about, that you may think that are important to include in the global conversation that we are now having, and what kind of issues you'd like to see in those post-2015 agenda, which kind of issues you would like to see covered by the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm just going to use these are the kind of issues that, for example, we were discussing about, 250, 300 people. We had just a meeting in Geneva similar to this, not so much private sector, but it was, multi-stakeholder as well, more member states focused. And these are the kind of issues that came out. They are not exactly the same as the ones in the consultations, as you can see. So they were talking about the need to focus on water efficiency and reuse. What you've been talking about this morning really relates to this, about allocation and balancing uses, about governance, about water cooperation, about resilience and climate change. And for each of these, during that consultation, we were talking about targets and indicators. So how does this aggregate in practice? What does it mean? And so we both focus on definitions, but also on how this will disaggregate. So I just leave it with you, and I hope it's enough as background. Thank you very much for your attention.